This
Yep,
conference
it's
will now be recorded.
Yeah, Tirupati, yesterday I posted one error message in a group.
mm-hmm. What was that? Can you
Mm,
give me the invoice number? What is the
Yeah,
error message exactly? You can take the control and you can show it if you wish.
okay, okay.
If not, you can verbally explain.
Okay, how can I take this control?
No, what was the were you able to
I mean,
complete the invoice, or it is stuck in needs revalidation?
while post to ledger, it shows error message like,
Uh-huh.
mm,
What was the message?
this action isn't applicable for the invoice in its current state.
So have you validated the invoice?
Yeah,
What is the invoice number?
mm, Shivashakti 001.
What is that? Shiva Shakti.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, this invoice date will be 3/3/2023. Yeah, this is the one.
This is accounted, right? Already.
Yeah, yesterday. Okay,
This is already accounted.
okay. Today I didn't see this. What is the current status? Yesterday I got the error
No,
message.
once the invoice is validated, finally validated, maybe you run the accounting books again. At that time, I think it has given. Maybe it has given the issue.
Okay.
No worries. Okay. Okay. So let me create one more invoice, the standard invoice quickly, and then we'll discuss few of the concepts. Right. Okay. We'll do one thing. So here, what is we are selecting, right? The business unit. So we can even default this business unit. We don't need to select the business unit. We'll show that. So okay. So anyways, the business unit is available, right? So we will create this invoice. We'll go back to the setup and maintenance area, and then we'll see how to default this one. Okay. So what I did, I have selected the business unit and the supplier, and the supplier set automatically got defaulted, right? So this is my invoice number, and the invoice amount I want to enter it for $200. My payment terms are immediate, right? So the requester name, this way everything we discussed, right? So once you click over here, you just need to give the invoice amount, and you need to give the distribution, right? You, as I said, we can give the distributions here, but we can, you can also give the distribution from the distributions tab as well. So let us say, see, if you uh, uh, see, there are what the structure we discussed. Invoice header will have lines, will have distributions, right? So these distributions, you can assume that this is the stationary expense, that has been booked for $200, and this $200 belongs to, which means this $200 equivalent stationery is being used by various departments, right? The prepayment, sorry, the stationery expense account has to be booked with the combination of departments, right? How do you differentiate? Let us say my HR department has $100 of $100 stationery, and my finance department has used $100 stationery. So that differentiation you should give while giving your code combinations, right? Otherwise you will not be able to track at that level, right? So how you can do that? See, either you can give $100 multiple lines, you can give. That is one way. So what do you do here? You can give the code combination which is related to, uh, let me just quickly create here itself. We'll do that, right? So what we discussed. So my finance department has used $100 of stationery, and I don't know whether stationery account exists or not, or else I can use the salary account, right? The same account I want to use. So the main objective over here is the the invoice amount what you got is belongs to multiple departments, or maybe multiple which spreads out across multiple, what do you call, the product lines, or multiple company codes. It depends how you get, right? So in that case, how you do, you create an invoice. You have created an invoice. At the invoice header it is one amount, but the invoice what we got, the expenses, that particular expenses has been consumed by maybe various departments, or the product lines, or maybe the same invoice amount is for the same invoice, maybe it include the amount, but it further had maybe stationary expense as well as the your telephone expenses, maybe something you have already incurred over there. That segregation you have in your invoice. Then how do you enter that, right? You can either you can enter from the multiple invoicing lines, or one line you can define with the one line we can define with the multiple distributions. That is how you can do it. So let me enter the, sorry guys, just give me 1 minute. I'm sorry. Yeah. So what you do, you can enter the multiple lines. That is what we are seeing right now, right? So what is this account 8101? The product line I am not using anything. The default one. Even intercompany also, right? Future. So this is how you can book the invoice, right? Assume that you got an invoice which has clear segregation. $200 of invoice which has clear segregation. Maybe the invoice has the expense details, or maybe the product details which spans over multiple products, or maybe which is having the details of multiple expense types. Then obviously this proportionate expenses has to be booked into the respective account, right? So how do you do that? You can do it by adding the multiple lines, or else you, or else you can even have the multiple distributions at the distribution tab. We will see that. Right now we are testing the process, one invoice header with multiple lines. Okay, just save it. The invoice status is not validated, so just validate it. Right, you can go here. See, this once the invoice is validated, this validated, there is a kind of hyperlink kind of option on the validated option. You can click over there. It gives you the invoice summary. Okay, so what are the statuses? Validation status is validated. My accounting status is unaccounted because it is not yet accounted, and the payment status is not yet paid, and the due date, What is the due date? This has been arrived depends upon my payment terms. Similarly, there are other options: installments, line variance, distribution variance, manual holds, system holds, supplier site. So there are various options that you see over here. This is specifically related to the holds. Okay, these kind of, see, if invoice got failed in validation process, okay, maybe depends of various reasons. Okay, so if the validation fails, then the what the application will do is it it categorize that failure validations into these buckets and it will show up here. Okay, if it is line variance, which means the invoice amount, whatever you see, the $200 invoice, my total the invoice line amounts are 200. Assume that if the 200 at header level I have given 200, and at the line level I've given only 100, maybe less than 100. In that case it goes into the holds. Okay, let us do that as well. So let us do that once, right? Let me add 1,000 over here, right? While giving the, while updated the invoice amount, it is clearly given me a message that the invoice line amount is more than that one. If the user still goes ahead, right, even the totals, there is an, at the bottom of the right corner bottom of the grade, the form, it shows up what is the invoice amount, what are the line amounts. It clearly gives you a message. Okay, once you updated something over there, just click on save. So okay, it got it got pulled the status back to needs revalidation. Okay, which means again I need to validate the invoice again. Okay, just I'm trying to validate the invoice with whatever the details we have punched in, right? So invoice, the process completed, but it's still showing the status as needs revalidation. Let us go there and see what is the reason. See, there is a line variance, distribution variance. There are two holes. There are two holes which are system holes. Okay, what does a system hold, what does a manual hold means? System hold means, which is the hold, see, if some of the validation gets failed, and those validation you should mandatorily needs to be corrected, those needs to be corrected mandatorily, then those we call as system holds. Until unless you correct that issue, system will never allow you to move further process. Okay, whereas manual holds are holds that we define as a user, as a consultant, we will be defining according to the business requirement. Okay, in that case the invoice will be put on hold, and later it will be released. How the manual holds released? So you need to correct the issue. So if in our case there are two holds, one is the line variance, one is the distribution variance. Why the line variance issue has come? Because the invoice header I am saying $200, but whereas lines amount has come to $1,100, which is $1,100, $900 difference. That is why application is giving me a message saying that these are the various variances. And when it comes to the distribution, what is the distribution variance, right? So at the line level I am giving this amount as $900, sorry, $1,000, but whereas the corresponding distribution I had entered only $100, right? So that, even that needs to be corrected, right? So what it is kind of, and see, one line, one option, it is kind of an hierarchical structure that you see, right? So one of the item, so what we give, uh, what we have given, the line 2, can you see, the line 2 has one distribution, right? One distribution, which is having the, which had the one, which had the amount as $1, but I made it $1,000 now. Okay, let us see, let us save and close, right? See, intentionally I haven't updated this invoice header amount, but I want to show something. Okay, so what the second line I had updated to $1,000, and the corresponding distribution I had updated back to $1,000. Let us go and save and validate what happens at the invoice level. We'll see that. Right, just click on validation and it is done. Still again it's the invoice not completely validated. And if you go and check on the holds, the distribution variance hold got removed here automatically. Right, how come it happened? Just because the variance whatever the application has given, saying that the invoice line amount is 1,000 but the distribution, the corresponding distribution is only 100. The difference I had corrected so that the invoice amount, the holds related to distribution variance has gone off from the application. Right, so what is this? The now only the one hold we have is the invoice amount is not equal. Then let me correct this invoice amount. Let me make it to the $1,100 and just let me save it and revalidate again. Right, the if you see the invoice status got validated, got moved into validated, and the holds portion, everything went away, everything goes, got disappeared from the screen because there were two issues. One is the invoice line amount which was not in sync with the invoice header amount. Another thing was the distribution amount which was not in sync with the one of the line amount. So those two amounts we had corrected because those needs to be corrected. Because what the application looks over here is, it it tries to tie back this invoice amount, whether the invoice amount is equal to the sum of lines amount in first place. Okay, whether the invoice line amount is equal to the sum of distributions of that line. Okay, when I say that line, which why I specifically said that line, because you can have one line can have multiple distributions. How do you add a distribution? You can add a distribution by just simply clicking on over here. Okay, so even I can add, let me see this distribution. One is belongs to, right, if you can see I am making changes on the invoice after validation also. Right, which means the application allows you to make any changes until it gets paid. Okay, so this distribution I can make changes. Right, so what I did, let me make changes on the what do you call, let me change the any of the segment value. Takes even the line 1 line to distribution 1 distribution 2, you can give the same code combination. It will not validate whether why you have given two same accounts. It will not, it is not that intelligent to notify you, but still you can give. So let me change the different department over here. Right, okay, what we did now, we have we have created an invoice line with multiple distributions. Right, again I have updated something over the invoice because it went into revaluation, needs revalidation again. Okay, let me validate once again. The invoice got validated. Right, what is the structure right now we created for this invoice? There is an invoice with $1,100, and those invoices which belongs to uh, uh, it has two clear segregations. Right, one of the stationery, maybe you can assume that one of them is the stationery, another one is the maybe something else, whatever you can think of. Okay, those two invoice lines, we further what we did, the $100 stationery which belongs to various departments. Right, the clear segregation I have written, I have given over in the part of distribution, as well as the second distribution line I had booked for only for one account. Right, so this is validated now, and let us run the create accounting and we'll see. Right, so post to ledger. Right, the account is completed, account is created. Let us go and view the accounting. Okay, can you see the distribution, the debit accounts, there are multiple debit accounts, multiple accounts got debited, and one liability got credited, right? So which means, where did we give these accounts? At the invoice line level as well as the distribution level, right? These accounts we have given at the line level. The very first one account for $1,000, and for the second and third line, we have given the distribution over in the distribution form of distribution grid of the invoice line 1, right? So that is how it got. So, that is how it got these three different code combinations. The natural account value is remain same, but if you see the second segment, which is department, having the different distinct values, that is how, which means the $1,100 worth of whatever the material you have procured is consumed by three various departments. That is how you can clearly see the desegregation. Okay, so this is how you book an invoice with multiple lines as well as multiple distributions as well. Okay, so fine. Let me. So once this invoice is now available for you to make the payments. Okay, so we'll see this. Let this invoice be available for us to make the payments in the coming up sections. Okay, so let us see. uh, let me do one thing. So we have given these distributions manually, right? So this, even these distributions also can be automatically populated. Okay, how you can do that, we will see now. Okay, so we need to go back to the setup and maintenance work area, right? Let me go into the financials, payables. So manage distribution sets. So manage distribution sets for, see, this task is available for various modules: payables, fixed assets, and receivables. Let me go into the payables related work area, related task. Okay, just click on this one. So these are the various distribution sets that got created by the various users, right? Let me create a distribution set. This is for which business unit I'll be creating, which is my Apple USBU, right? And the business unit, the name of my distribution set. So basically, why do I use a distribution set is to, for the line 2, what we did, a salary expenses, right? A salary expenses we booked for, the salary expense account is represented by 8101 in my natural account segment, and these are incurred by the company called Apple Inc, which is represented by 101 in my chart of account structure. And these salary expenses belongs to the employees. Salary expenses are incurred for the employees which belongs to various departments, which has rendered the services for various departments, right? That is how we, that is how we have, that is how we can create, right? Let us say, whatever may be the amount, just I'm taking the salary expenses over here, but you can give anything over there. Okay, so what we will do is we will book the proportionate expenses to HR, finance, as well as, if we have sales, we'll use the sales. If not something, we'll use the other account. Okay, assume that the 10,000, whatever the proportion, right? Assume that my salary expenses, whatever I'm giving is, uh, a 60% goes into the uh, HR, and 20% goes into the AC, and 20% goes into the sales, right? So salary expenses Apple. I'm just giving just to differentiate my distribution set. And distribution percentage, there are 100 and 0. It is uh, see, there are two things, 100 and 0, which means whether you want to calculate this amount automatically by the application, or you want to give that amount manually while creating the code combination, right? So let us come create one with the 100%. And once it is created, just add the distributions. What is the main objective is, you while creating the invoice, we had created the lines and distributions, right? Going forward, for manual invoice, you don't need to do that. Even that process also can be automated by way of defining your distribution sets. Once the distribution set is defined, that you can use going forward, okay, without doing any manual intervention, right? So give it let me give this 60% to my HR department. Human resource 8101, right? The product is unspecified, even the similar with intercompany as well. Future also is unspecified, right? Okay, so then let me add the other two lines as well. 101, what we discussed, finance, right? 8101, intercompany, future, right? So let me give one more line over here. What does it mean is, whatever the invoice amount that you are going to use book by this distribution set, it going to distribute the invoice amount in proportionate to this common distribution percentages that we have given. Let me
Department already given now.
I'll change back that one. Thank you. Fine. Save and close. Invoice, create invoices, create invoice, right? Just give the select the parameters. I'm booking it for Apple US, and BHL is my supplier, right? BHEL 03. Invoice I want to book for 1500, right? What I'll do is, I'll go into the lines, right? What is the amount? Invoice amount is my $1500, and instead of giving the distribution code combination, I will select the distribution set over here. The salary expense Apple is the distribution set which I created, right? So once I created, just go and see in the distributions. Once I have assigned this distribution set, the entire thing is automatically got populated. How come? Just because of the created distribution set. Okay, so assume that if we have created a distribution set with the percentage as 0, then what application will ask you is, it will ask you only to provide the code combination. You just create the code combination and assign this distribution set. Then what it will do, it will ask you, it is your job to give these amounts manually. Because of that percentages, this amount got derived by the application. If it is the 0% uh, distribution set, then it is now your job, because you are not sure, the amount gets fluctuate for every time. Then but you want to speed up the data entry process, right? In that case, what you can suggest as a consultant is, you go and create a distribution set without percentages and assign that distribution sets to the line level, so that the code combinations will be automatically populated. The user doesn't require to be select the combinations manually, but he has to give the amounts in the distribution area manually, so that it will reduce the, first of all, it saves time, distribution sets functionality, as well also it reduces the errors as well, right? Just validate it. You can save it and validate, or directly you can validate, right? Once it is validated, right, so the next action for you is to the similar one, same post to ledger. Post ledger or account interrupt, it's your wish. Okay, once the invoice is created, right, so there is one more tab I wanted to show you guys. So let me go into the invoice work area, which is the, let me check the invoice number 2, right? So there is a concept called, if you look at the invoice action, there is an option called manage installments. What does it mean? Manage installments is the area where it gives you the clear picture of your installments on your invoice. Okay, so what is an installment in first place? So it is kind of, see, in uh, how many uh, see, this installments page automatically populated, this data is automatically populated, right? From where this data populated, the due date and gross amount, it is because we had assigned the payment terms immediate. So saying that the saying that the since these payment terms are immediate, the amount has to be paid immediately, right? Whatever the payment, the invoice payment intervals, the invoice payment details are going to be updated over on the invoice installments. Okay, what is the due date of this invoice amount, and what amount is going to be needs to be paid on the due date, and by which way it is going to be paid, whether the check or electronic payment, what is that, those details it is going to be pulled up. So from where this payment priority and payment method got pulled up here. So payment priority, it has taken from the invoice option. If anyone remembers, if you can also go back and check on the one of the option was payment priority on manage invoice options. The value it was there as the 99, which means, see, why it is the payment priority is used while making the payments. Okay, in the batch, if you are making the payments in a bunch, 100, let us say 20 payments are you are making as one payment in one batch, right? So out of which payment, which invoice has to be selected, which invoice has to be paid in first place. For that purpose, this is the priority which works in. Okay, payment method is the type of method or the way that you are paying, whether it's a check or EFT or wire payments. There are various payment method, right? So that is how it gets derived. Okay, while making the payment, batch payments, you will be selecting these option. Depends upon that, the invoice will get selected for the payments. Okay, so assume that if my invoice has the payment terms to pay in two installments, let us say 50% immediately, 50% after 1 week. Okay, If that in such a way the payments are terms are defined and that payment terms are assigned to the invoice, then the installments page will display two lines. One line with the due date as today's date with the 50% of amount, and the next line will display with the due date as the after 1 week from the invoice date with the leftover amount, which is the 50% amount. Okay, that is how the installments will get derived on your invoice screen. It is basically depends upon your payment terms. Fine. Okay, let us say you have created an invoice, as user has created an invoice, but there is something which the invoice needs to be corrected. So that can be corrected, but the invoice itself is wrongly created, right? The invoice has to be cancelled, right? There is an option called cancel the invoice. Just go and click on that one. The invoice will be cancelled. Do you want to continue? Click on OK. So what had happened? The invoice got cancelled. Now the invoice amount got marked as 0. Okay, and go and check the distributions. What had happened? Right? Because as and when you as and when you cancel the, what do you call, the accounted invoice, right? Since the journal is already being created, right, for the 50 dollars of these two lines, the account, which means this for these one and two line one, distribution one and two, the accounting, this line one and two has already been generated an accounting journal and which got posted to your books of accounts, right? So as and when you click on this cancel button on the invoice actions tab, the application automatically has inserted two more distributions by reversing the same amount with the negative amount, right? So even can you see the accounting status at the right corner? You see it is unprocessed. For the two lines it is processed, two lines it are unprocessed, which means when you create an accounting, even this also needs to be accounted, right? Why? Because the journal which is got created has to be reversed in GL, right? So you don't need to do that in manually in GL. That has to be again the journal, the original journal has created from the source payables, and as and when you cancel the invoice, the journal also gets reversed. Okay, for that you just need to create accounting again. So maybe you can do it from here, or you can even trigger the program which will does the create accounting activity. Can you see, can you see the lines which were, I think, so how come this 1100? Did we cancel the two line? I think yes, the invoice which created with multiple lines we have cancelled, right? So that is how you, that is why you can see the accounting got reversed. Basically, if you look on the status, if you look on the status for the accounting, you can see the whatever the accounting that got generated initially got reversed right now upon cancellation. Okay, you should see the journal got created in the GL as well by reversing, which means the account which got debited in the initial phase will get credited now. Okay, that is how your cancellation works. Okay, so this is how you create the invoices with the one invoice header with multiple lines, multiple distributions, and that is how you, even we have seen the creation, even we have seen the canceling the invoice, which is nothing but a reversing the invoice. Okay, let us see, let us try to create debit memo, credit memo transaction types. Okay, so what is a debit memo, credit memo? We discussed yesterday, right? A debit memo or credit memo, both are to reduce you the liability, reduce your liability, reduce the supplier liability, which we supposed to pay. I'm not doing anything. I'm sorry. Go. Sorry, guys. So uh, while suppose there are some, the maybe the supplier has given you an overpriced invoice, right? In that case, the later once you make the payment, or once you make the payment, later you realize that invoice, whatever the sent by the supplier is an overpriced invoice. The pricing correction has to be done, right? Maybe you have returned something. For that purpose also, to that extent, the credit note has to be given by the supplier, right? So that is for that purpose we create the debit memo or credit memo. Both serves the same purpose. Either it reduce the supplier liability by, but it is about the origination, who initiated, who identified that one. Let us say as a company, I have procured material from the supplier, and the supplier has sent me an overpriced invoice which already I paid, but later I realized that he has sent me an overpriced invoice. That correction has to be done. Let us say thousand, the invoice amount supposed to be 1,000, but he has sent me 1,100, but my accountant has paid 1,100, but later I realized that 100 has to be recollected from the supplier, right? So that for that purpose you can create an credit memo, and that you can adjust, right? That is what happens, right? When you go and refund something, there may be two options. One, the refund may be happen. Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah. So so we are creating the debit or credit memo. Both serves the purpose to reduce the liability. And once you create the credit memo, when you go into the shop, right, the refund process may be either two ways, right? You will be getting a refund, or you will be getting a credit note, right? Credit note can be later used against your purchases, right? So by using credit note, so you can see in the Amazon, if you have if there are two options, right? Whether you want to refund the, whether you want the Amazon to be refunded the money, or the amount has to be added back to your wallet, which means it is a kind of an credit note itself, right? Whenever you, again, whenever you do something procurement from the Amazon, what happens, it basically adjusts the wallet balance, right? If your purchase is more than your wallet balance, then it'll ask you to make the payment the balance amount. If not, then the wallet balance will be against the balance, the amount will get adjusted, right? This it is the similar purpose. Okay, so the invoice amount, the stand debit memo or credit memo, as I said, it is to reduce the liability, so that it should always be in negative sign. It should always be created in the negative sign, and select the type, whether it is debit memo or credit memo. Depends upon the requirement. Okay, just give the dates, and the rest of the process remains same. Minus 100, right? And just give the distribution set. The process remains same. Rest of the remains same, but only the transact transaction type you need to change, as well as the amount column should represent with the negative amount. If you give a positive amount, it gives you a message saying that For credit memo, you cannot enter with a positive. Credit or debit memo, you cannot enter a positive line. That is what the event system will notify you, right? Just create this information, publish this information, and save it and validate it. That's it. The accounting, the process remains same for the rest of the processes. You need to account this one. It is an unaccounted transaction which needs to be accounted. What happens is, when you are making for the next payment, you can adjust this invoice, where you can use this invoice, this credit memo, so that to this extent 100, your payment will get reduced. Okay. Or else, if you are not, let us say you have paid an excess payment, again that you get as a refund, if that is the last case, right? So you made an excess payment which you are not going to transact with this company. I want back my money, right? So that can be initiated by way of refund. That is a different process. Fine. This is how you create a credit memo, and then we'll see the debit memo as well. So there is no difference, just the transaction type we select as different. That's it. Right. HEL debit memo. Debit memo. Let me try to give positive amount and try to create whether the application gives me the message or not. Let's see. You can use the distribution set, but just for you guys familiarization, I am just using the code combination window. So let's see whether the application validates the invoice. You must enter a negative number. That is what it is giving you the message. Okay. I'll take up the question once this invoice is completed. Right, this invoice is now validated, right? Because we even tried to enter an invoice debit memo or credit memo with positive amount. System has that intelligence to notify you that it should be an positive, it should be a negative amount. So right, this is there is an another window kind of about this record. If you click over here, it gives you an audit history, who created this user, what time they created, and if someone updated this on this record, it gives you an last updated by whom and what date. That kind of information also application gives you. This is applicable for all invoices. Okay. This is how you create the invoices manually, right? How do you go to the invoices for such, right? Manage invoice is the task, maybe depends upon the various options. There is an invoice number based on which you can search for, or the based on the invoice date you can search for, or the based on the supplier site you can search for. If not, if this search criteria is not sufficient for you, you can even add few more search parameters from this advanced option. Once you click on advanced, the grid will gets open, and from the add fields you can add various other search criteria parameters to your search criteria. Once you go into advanced mode also, there are various options for your options as well for your existing search area as well. Okay. So just let me search for today's date, and It is just a message saying that it takes longer time. No issue, right? These are the invoices which got created with today's date. The creation date as today. Okay, fine. So anyone has any questions on this?
Yeah, Tirupati.